Okay, so the recording has started and we are ready to start the webinar of today. Welcome again, everybody, to the welcome webinar for the Back to School campaign 2024 organized by the European School Education Platform. Today marks the official start of our campaign, and we are really thrilled to have so many of you join us for this special event. As many of you already probably know, because you saw through our social media and our latest articles, this year's campaign is focusing on the new eTwinning annual theme 2024-2025, Citizenship Education, Celebrating What Unites Us. What does it mean? It means that from today, eTwinners can explore activities, resources, and events, such as webinars, centered around this theme and designed to help them improve their project, the quality of their project, and forge new collaborations. On this slide, you see a very important link, which is the one of the annual theme group, the central hub where all of these initiatives are happening. And you can see also the link in the chat. On this group, all the activities, webinars, and mentioned resources will be focused on the three main pillars of our annual theme: active citizenship, developing critical thinking, and learning about the European Union and its values. Today's webinar will guide you into the new theme, but there is more to come. There are other 4 events, 4 webinars. Actually, there are partner finding fairs tailored for each age group category that will take place throughout October. So don't forget to take a look to see the partner finding fair you would like to attend and to register for these events. While enjoying the session, also remember to share your participation on social media with the hashtags eTwinning and EU values. So let's spread together the word about the campaign, about the new annual theme, and about this great launch event you are attending. Now, let me introduce our guest speakers for today. We have with us Julian von Repper-Bismarck and Ryan Temara. Julian is the executive director and founder of Lie Detectors, an award-winning and journalist-led organization on news literacy, raising awareness of disinformation and media bias among school children and teachers. Ryan is outreach and policy officer at the same organization, Lie Detectors. Lie Detectors is also a supporting partner of the European School Education Platform. So we are very thrilled to have Julian and Ryan with us today. We had the honor of hosting Julian at our roundtable on the topic of digital well-being in the past days in the context of the eTwinning Annual Conference. So we are very happy to have her with us today to kick off this year's campaign and share her expertise on these key topics that we just mentioned. Before I hand the floor to Julian, just a quick reminder. As I was anticipating to you at the beginning of the session, the webinar is recorded and the recording will be published on our official YouTube page as of the next days. And it will be also uploaded on the annual theme group together with the presentation. So you will have the time to catch up with the content of the slides and also with the recording itself and share it with your colleagues. And another reminder, which is more an encouragement for our participants, is to consider the chat as a tool to pose any questions for our speakers. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout the course of the session, and if there's any that is relevant to the topics addressed today, and if there's any time at the end of the session, we'll try to address them. Now, without further ado, I would pass the floor to Julian and to her presentation.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I hope you've all got good cups of coffee this afternoon. So we have an hour together, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the online world, particularly online disinformation, online polarization, something that we call online information isolation, and the impact of that on us as citizens, on our societies, but also what we can actually do as active citizens about that. So I'm going to share my screen and hope that this works. Is that working? I hope you can all see that. Great. I can only see a few of you, but if there's any issue, please shout and let me know if any of the audio is not working. So, thank you for the very nice introduction. As you know, we are talking to you from Lie Detectors, which is an independent and European media literacy organization that works with journalists in classrooms and in teacher training facilities around Europe to enable teachers and children to really start the conversation about all of the online content, the veracity of that, the fact checking of it, the seeking out of good quality content, but also understanding how content reaches us. We work with academics to really look at the impact of our work, and we advise quite a few EU expert bodies that are talking about making the kind of policy change that'll make it easier for teachers like you to integrate these very important subjects into your classroom teaching. So today we're going to talk to you a little bit about what we do, but also we want to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you where you get your news from, where you think your students get their news from, and then really talk about how your own experience can be placed into a European context, why it's hard sometimes to discuss the issues that we're going to be talking about, but why it's also so important. I'll give you a few ideas of things that you might do in the classroom with your students, and also some resources, and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can just jot them down and ask them later. So first of all, I would like to see how savvy you are. I would like you to use the chat and tell us whether you think that this is a true post. This was posted by Donald Trump, and apparently Taylor Swift endorsed him, flip-flopping rather massively and actually deciding that because of an attack she almost suffered, she was going to be endorsing Donald Trump rather than Kamala Harris. If you think that that's true, put your thumbs up. Give us your thumbs up. I can't actually see the screen. I can't see the chat, so I can't see whether anybody is what the reactions are. And how about this one? I'm going to show you three. Aha, okay. I wonder whether you knew that the Eiffel Tower actually caught fire during the Olympics in Paris. If you think that that's true, please give us your thumbs up. Okay. I can see some thumbs up. Yeah, it's a pretty convincing picture, isn't it? It's a video.
And Julian, in the chat, by the way, they are all saying no, no, false, no.
What's that? In the chat, what?
In the chat, yeah. In the chat.
Excellent. And finally, I wonder whether you heard about this thing that apparently happened and whether you think this is true or not. A shark actually accessing a major highway in Texas after a very large hurricane swept the region and flooded the roads, making it apparently very dangerous for people to be driving their cars. So I wonder whether you think these things are true or not. If you've had a little think, I can tell you now that they're all fake, all of them. There was no fire in the Eiffel Tower. Taylor Swift did not endorse Donald Trump at any point, and there are no sharks floating on any highways in the United States. Although this is a fake post that keeps cropping up again and again. So these are the sort of things that children come across. Perhaps these are things that have come across your radar screen, and these are things that worry us at Lie Detectors very greatly. And why? Well, it's really because we're noticing that the disinformation is circulating ever more widely on channels that are difficult to moderate and hard to spot. That these are the sort of pieces of disinformation that polarize people, start dividing people up into very polar opposites, and really hollowing out any kind of centrist debate. We also see, I remember there was a time when we first started lie detectors where that this kind of consideration was particularly acute around election time, but we can see that disinformation is circulating all year round, regardless of when, in tiny little drips, very, very slow drip, drip effect, gradually eroding our sense of what is true and what is not, what can we trust and what can we not. And we can see this targeting younger audiences than we initially thought on platforms that we hadn't actually considered before. And so at Lie Detectors, we think that there's no time to waste, and we work with students and journalists, we work with teachers, we work with academics, and we work with policymakers to really see what we can do to make critical digital literacy something that every teacher can teach regardless of their subject area. And we think there's no time to waste. So these are numbers that we're incredibly proud of, because there's no organization like Lie Detector that does it so in such a vast scale. So we work with more than 450 journalists. We go into more than 1,000 individual classrooms every year, and we do that in different languages and different formats. And as you know, we also train teachers. And this is what a typical classroom visit might look like. And you can see the enormous diversity of classrooms. You're all familiar. I don't know whether your classroom looks more like one of the ones in the middle where there's very little digital going on in the center photo that you can see. There's all the chalk and chalkboard, and we're talking about something in a very analog way, but then also classrooms that are very, very well kitted out, go into all sorts of places. And I have to say that what's really interesting about that is that even though the classrooms and the kit, the facilities are vastly different, the things that worry the children are not that different. When we ask them, you have to imagine that when our journalists walk into classrooms, and they say, what is it that worries you about the online world? They tell us that they're worried about conspiracy theories, that they're worried about what they should do when they receive a chain letter. And they want to know how to spot something that is not true online. They want to also understand how real professional information gets put together. And they ask us these things. You have to imagine particularly during the pandemic, children would put up their hands and they would say, is it true that wearing a mask is going to make me ill? Or is is Bill Gates going to put a microchip into my arm if I get vaccinated? And, these kind of worrying posts are gaining momentum also as generative AI is coming into play. I don't know how many of you are thinking about how you will be using AI in your classroom, but generative AI is certainly an area where I think awareness really does need to get a lot higher, particularly because AI is also going to allow social media platforms to really refine their preference settings. And I would really like for us to just consider this idea of preference settings a little bit, because what happens when your information world really is custom made for you to tailored to your preferences, your wishes, your preconceived notions, we can really start to think that it's not even just the content that's problematic online, but that one of the issues that we face is that we're no longer sharing an individual information space. And these are kind of the terms that float around. These concepts are filter bubbles, echo chambers, information isolation, where we are increasingly consuming the information differently from people who are sitting right next to us, and we have no idea that that is actually happening. The good news, so this is all the very, the grim news. The good news is that initiatives are out there to do something. Teachers are doing something. I'm going to be talking about your role in a minute. I'm going to also show you what journalists say about what happens to them when they go into classrooms and they talk about these sort of things. How do you talk about conspiracy theories with a classroom full of children you may never have met before? How do you talk about generative AI, and how do you talk about the effect of algorithms on our news feeds and on our joint perception of the world? And so I'm going to show you a video which is actually quite good news. I would like you to ignore the slight promo music in the background and just concentrate on what the journalists have to say. These are some of our really very valued journalists talking about how they feel about going into classrooms and addressing these topics.
Julian, sorry to interrupt you. I
Yes.
think we cannot hear the audio. Maybe you forgot to add the app option include computer
Oh,
sound.
yep.
Maybe
Hold on.
we can try again.
How do I do that?
You can stop sharing.
I'm going to do it again. Thank you for telling
Exactly.
me. Hold on a
No
second.
problem.
Hold on. Share. Oh, yes.
Exactly.
Very
And
good
then
point.
there
I
is
forgot
a
to put, yes,
small tick.
yes.
No problem.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me go back a bit. Can you see that?
We
Hold on.
can see.
Hold on. It's actually it's been a while. I used to be so fluent on doing webinars, and now I've been doing things in person again and switching
Quite
to
a
an online
hidden
format.
option.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me go back one. There we go. Okay, let me try that again. How's that? Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Always very nervous, which doesn't make sense because I'm a television journalist.
I was really frightened, yeah.
What if I don't know the answer? What will they think about me?
Right after, I felt relieved.
I felt really uplifted, like we can really make a difference in here.
And the kids are really proud of having found out things. So teachers are often wondering, how come the kids know this?
It was great to see how the pupils absorbed the content.
There is no way of protecting them from ever getting in touch with fake news. They have a phone, they have social media, so they will get in touch with it at some point.
I just think it's so important to help kids, to help teachers understand how to navigate this complicated information world.
I feel more optimistic about the fact that you can really change things and about the power of social media, because if you give children the right tools, if you teach people how to use them, then it can change everything.
We're just planting little seeds in their heads. Check it out, trust yourself.
So that's what our journalists have to say, and I think it's quite positive. The thing that we're really interested in, because journalists only have so much time to spare for a classroom visit, and they're not pedagogues. They can do a limited amount, but they can't do as much as you can. What we're really interested in is seeing how we can get teachers like you ready to work. To work on this issue by themselves in the classroom. And perhaps you already are. The idea for us is that once teachers can handle this topic themselves and do it in a way that is recognized and that is incentivized, that where there is time in the curriculum, that this is actually something that nonprofits like lie detectors in the end won't even need to be involved in anymore. How long that'll take, we don't know. But for that, I'm now going to hand on and unshare my screen and introduce my lovely colleague, Ryan Tamara, who is our Outreach and Policy Officer, and who's going to be asking you and inviting you onto Slido to answer a few questions so that we can see what this audience is all about.
Well, thank you, Juliana. So, hello, everybody. I'm Ryan, and I will share my screen right now. So, normally you will have access to a Slido. Please be patient with me because for me it's also new. But normally you should have access through a QR code or via this little password. So if I can just see some of you are already in it, like with a little thumbs ups or something, and so we can then launch it. It's quite a short one, but because we are more than 240 people, that we will have really a good sense of an all overview of what is happening. So I will just launch the first question, and we will see if there are already some answers or not in it. So let's go with the first one. So in one word, if you can just tell us, what does digital media literacy mean to you? Awareness, understanding information. So if you repeat one word, it will appear in a bigger font. I like the word filtering as well.
Lovely. I love these words. Aren't they wonderful?
Innovation, yeah. Being safe. Critical thinking. That's our motto, so for sure. Very important. I like that one as well. I will keep it a little bit longer just because I can see there's only 60 people, and I think more and more people will join quite soon.
We have also some keywords in the chat, Ryan. We just have safety.
Okay. Interesting. So I will go to the next question. In total, there are 4 questions. So what social media platforms did you use this week to inform yourself about the world? LinkedIn, yeah. Instagram. Spotify podcast. Okay.
Also, maybe consider whether you've been informing yourselves on platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, or perhaps Twitch or Discord. Maybe you've been on Telegram.
Okay, so Facebook and Instagram are really the 2 most popular ones. Telegram appears. Okay, so next question. In your opinion, how important is that your students learn about online disinformation and polarization at school? You have the choice within 5 choices. And normally we will see a ranking. and the most popular one will be the first one, etc. It is quite similar with what we have seen in our experience through the years. And we can see already a trend that crucial and very important are clearly the most popular one. And if you are here, that makes sense. And we will go to the last question, which is how often have you raised the subject of online disinformation and polarization at school with your students during the last year? So even if it's just talking about it, not having a whole lesson about it, but really having a contact with the students, with your students about it. Seems like monthly is the most popular one. So not yet every week, but we hope after this talks, you will have more tools to be able to tackle it every week. Okay, thank you very much. I will stop share my screen. It was a pleasure to see all these answers, and you will have some in-depth knowledge about all of these subjects with the rest of the presentation. Over to you, Juliana.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. Well, I thought that was absolutely fascinating. So Instagram and Facebook were your favorite places to get information. And a vast majority of you thought that addressing these issues with your own students at school is either crucial or very important. And yet not that many of you were actually talking about it all the time. And I would like to show you how this compares with teachers across Europe that we have been asking over the years. So, oh, let me see. Can you see this? Let me see if this is working. I need to. Okay. Oh,
It's working. We can see.
excellent,
Julian.
wonderful. So I would like to place this in context of a survey that we did with more than 600 teachers from Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, Austria, and Poland, and see what they had to say. And the thing is, like you, when we asked them how important were these issues for them, you can see the green is where they were giving this issue 4 and 5-star ratings in terms of the importance they attached to it. And then when we asked them, how active have you been and how often have you been raising this, the picture was very different, and you're actually performing incredibly well compared to these more than 600 teachers we were asking 2 years ago, because you can see that the green and the blue, which is very kind of frequent activity in the classroom to discuss source literacy, media literacy. It's really a very different picture. The red and the orange are the teachers that really don't manage to do it that often. And when we ask them, what is it that is keeping you from teaching this issue that you think is very important to address with your students, because it gives them power, like many of you said in the Slido. It empowers, it gives you knowledge, it gives you safety. why is it that you're not as active as you clearly would like to be? The answers are usually threefold. The first answer is usually, we don't have time. Nobody gives us time. There's no time in the curriculum. The second answer is, well, nobody incentivizes us and we don't get recognized for doing any work on it if we do manage to somehow crowbar time into the curriculum. And while we can't, as lie detectors, do very much about these first two issues, the third one is one that really, really piqued our interest, because the third reason that teachers like you give us for not being more active is we don't feel equipped. We don't know how to address this issue, which can be risky, and which can get us, some blowback from parents, perhaps, and where we really don't really know necessarily the landscape. And so, I have to acknowledge it's not that easy, because then when you think about the questions that Ryan was putting to you in terms of where did you go to get your information, your answers were not that different from the teachers that we asked. Those teachers were very active, as you can see, on YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook. I think that your top answers were Instagram and Facebook. But if you compare this to their own students, whom we also asked the very same question, you'll see that the answer is very different. Everywhere where you see orange that is unaccompanied by blue, this is where children are on their own and they are unmonitored. They are, as you can see, vastly on YouTube, vastly on TikTok, Snapchat, alone on Discord, Fortnite, Twitch. These are gaming platforms, but also on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook. And I think that Ryan actually knows a whole bunch of new platforms. They keep popping up. And so it's really no wonder that it's difficult for teachers to address this. And these graphics are really important. They highlight several things. First of all, the majority of these platforms that children refer to gather information about the world are mainly visual. That means they're very hard to moderate. They're often very often encrypted. That means that they're private. And again, it's very difficult for outside content moderators to come in and clear up any mess, and kind of clear up any misunderstandings or falsehoods that are circulating on there. It also means that they're very alone. And so that means that they really do need the tools to navigate these places effectively and safely. The good news is, and all of this, is that there are things that you can do. And those of you who've told us that you're addressing this every week, you already know what to do. But even for you, actually, before I got onto this onto this webinar, I was thinking, what is it? How can we distill it to an ever simpler format that we can all understand? So what we can do is we can access the wonderful resources that are online. For instance, these guidelines for teachers were developed by the European institutions with a group of experts, including lie detectors, where we really tried to come up with exercises and approaches and lines of questioning that would allow teachers to talk about the issue of online disinformation, online algorithmic isolation in a very fluent and safe way. And these guidelines have been translated into lots of languages, and there's all sorts of wonderful things online. I'm going to show you a few more resources later on. But more simply than that, you can actually distill what you do when you talk about this in the classroom even more. You can remember, just like I showed you not very political examples right at the beginning. I showed you a burning Eiffel Tower. I showed you a shark on a highway. And I showed you Taylor Swift. You can actually deal with these very profound issues of online information manipulation in a very simple way that doesn't have to be political. It doesn't have to be complex. You can use very simple examples to talk about very important issues. You can hand over tools. There's an awful lot of tools out there, and the children love to use them. You can also start by asking questions, and you can also remember that it's not terrible to actually be to enjoy a joke online, as long as you know that it is a joke and not fact. But if we are going to distill it even more, then I would say, if you're going to make it simpler yet, what's going to be really important is to remember the two parts of addressing media literacy online. Yes, of course, we have to sensitize children to the fact that there are dangers lurking online. And this is where fact-checking tools come in. And the wonderful thing about that is that children really love to use them, absolutely adore using them. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that children and all of us remember that there are real treasures of information to be found online, and that it is worth taking the time to understand the difference between the two and sorting the two from one another. If I were to distill it even further, I think a one-word answer to what we can all do in the classroom and with all of the people that we interact with, the one thing that we can do, if you can make the children in your classroom breathe and slow down, then you've already won half the battle. If you can make them just consider before they share online posts or engage or form an opinion, then that's an awful lot of work already done for you. And very finally, and I think this is actually something quite radical that we have to do, it is that we have to really admit when we don't know something. Because as you can tell, the universes of information that we inhabit and that children inhabit are vastly different. We can't possibly know what they are reading, what they are watching, what they're using to form their worldview. And so we really have to come with an incredibly open mind and with a willingness to say, I don't know. You tell me. We have to be thinking about coming first with the questions, not with the opinions, both in terms of how we breach the question of digital citizenships, but also in how we discuss facts as a whole. We have to abandon this idea of one person being right and the other person being wrong. And instead, we need to really take the time to climb out of our own information silos and back into the messy middle, where facts are not necessarily black and white, but where there's a messy middle of gray gray nuance and complicated reality, which is the one place where we can really meet one another. And because I'm sitting in Brussels, I'm also going to tell you a few things that we believe policymakers can do. We think that policymakers ought to be making media literacy into a cross-curricular priority so that this critical digital literacy is really considered as a core literacy alongside reading and writing and counting. And it's taught by all teachers across all subject areas and across all age groups as well. We really advocate for the kind of media literacy interventions that we do and that many other organizations like us do, to become measured for their impact, so that we have standards, so that you, the teachers, actually know what the nutritional value is of one item of media literacy training, so that you know what you are giving to the students, how much literacy, how much empowerment you're giving to the students, and how much you still need to keep ensuring you put into the curriculum for them to learn. Obviously, there needs to be more funding for this sort of thing, also for you to be trained up if you haven't already been trained up. And then going into far more sort of complex, not complex, but far more kind of theoretical and regulatory and legal realms here in Brussels, people are thinking about the flip side of disinformation. And that is not just the people, what do we do about the demand for disinformation? How do we train people to resist its polarizing effect? But also, what do we do about the drivers of disinformation, such as the algorithm-driven large online platforms? And that is a lot of work that yet needs to be done. Finally, I'd like to also, as I promised, I'd like to show you some resources. My colleagues at Lie Detectors have put together a wonderful collation of resources. These are media literacy games, handbooks, also fact-checking websites. And if you take a hold of this QR code, you might be able to see them. I'll also talk you through them a little bit. This is the disinformation checklist that we work with, and you could really dedicate at least one classroom session just by going through these and literally taking newspaper articles or Instagram posts or YouTube videos and checking yourselves with this list whether you can figure out whether a post is true or not, whether it's biased or not, whether it's tending to polarize or raise your emotional heat a little bit. You can also use our own news challenges in which lie detectors sort of encourages young people to slip into the skin of a journalist and ask journalistic questions to find the truth. They're also really wonderful handbooks that are written out of the perspective of cognitive psychology and neurology. There's more and more work that is being done on why does this content lodge itself in our brains so effectively? Why is it so difficult to remove, and what can be done about it? I really recommend that if you dedicate even just an hour to reading this, you take a look at these two handbooks by Stephen Lewandowski, which are incredibly short and very well written and grounded in very serious science. There's also games and videos, and then there's a whole list of fact-checking sites, but I have to tell you that fact-checking sites change like the weather. Some of these links might not even be active anymore because fact-checking sites are often dependent on funding. The funding comes and goes, which is all the more reason for all of us and for your students to become savvy by themselves. And with that, I'm going to close. I'm also going to tell you that if you would like to request a classroom visit or teacher training, just get in touch with us in the email that you see down there. And with that, I thank you very much, and I'd love to hear your questions.
Thank you very much, Julian, for this great presentation. It was really interesting. And thank you for really underlining how these aspects empower students to become like active citizens and linking it to our annual theme. It was really interesting. And while our attendees think about questions to pose, since we still have some time, I noted down a couple of points that we found really interesting, and it could be very interesting for the teachers who are attending the webinars. I found very interesting this image of teachers opening the conversation, very powerful and very important. So I would like to ask you, how can teachers then be equipped to teach media literacy to their students? Like, where should we start? If you have some tips or something that we could take as takeaways from the session.
Yes, thank you. That's such an important question, Alessia. So a lot of people say children are digital natives and adults are not, and that we're behind. And I can tell you also that when I look at all of these platforms that the children are on and that they go to inform themselves, I don't know half of them. But that shouldn't stop us, because even though they are very fast and very agile and very confident in zooming from one platform to another, and engaging on one platform for between the different platforms, they're not yet able to place this information in context. You have to imagine that I started lie detectors because of a conversation I had with a 13-year-old child who was telling me that Instagram was a news source. And so it doesn't matter how fast you are online and how many things you know how to do. If you as a young person are not yet aware that there is a difference between a photo app and actual news content, then that is something that a teacher can definitely teach you. And that goes from all issues, for biology teachers, politics, ethics teachers, no doubt literature teachers, even art teachers, for art forgeries, how do you check these things? You can address this issue of source verification and critical thinking from all of your subject areas, and you don't have to be afraid just because the children are on platforms that you're not on. One thing that's really wonderful is to actually just ask them what's bothering them. What is it that they're seeing? It's very perhaps not that usual for for an inquiry-led approach, but that is certainly something that the expert consensus is more and more advocating for. Go in there, face your children, and say, just like the journalists in the video, I'm pretty terrified. What if I don't have answers for you? But let's have your questions first of all, you know? And from there, an awful lot of good things can flow.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. So we have a question from the chat. If you could provide any ideas about cross-curricular modules on digital literacy in terms of samples or concrete examples.
Yes, look, there's very wonderful material. Again, I urge you to have a look at the EU guidelines on tackling disinformation and promoting digital literacy. The ones that I showed you earlier, they exist in all, I think, in 26 different languages, and they're very. It's only, I think, it's 40 pages of various exercises that you can do, things that you should be mindful of, questions that you can be putting to your students. But there's also further reading. There's endless amounts of really wonderful material out there. So, take a moment, and you can even, on YouTube, you'll find all sorts of great short videos that are going to be self-explanatory that you can show to your students and discuss afterwards. When it comes to cross-curricular modules, that is, I believe, something that in particular the Nordic countries are getting quite good at. For instance, I believe in Finland and in Sweden, this is now a part of all teaching. In countries like Austria have got a separate subject area called basic digital competences. So, the cross-curricular aspect is not yet very developed across Europe, but it's certainly something that needs to be looked at, because it's not okay just to lock this issue away into one separate classroom session. It's something that all teachers need to be talking about, because it is the way that these are the building blocks for building knowledge by now in the 21st century. So I really start with the guidelines and see where you get to.
Thank you for this recommendation. And actually, you already in part answered to this question, but I was wondering, since in our community, of course, there are teachers who teach in different age group categories, so from kindergarten to more to teenagers to more mature students. Do you believe that these approaches and these tips and tools that you mentioned can be a part of a transversal approach, or there are differences that apply to different group age category? Like if you feel like giving a tip to the teachers that are listening.
Look, I've seen media literacy modules made for pre-literate children. I've seen media literacy that is based purely on emoticons for children aged 4 to 6, and they are absolutely brilliant, and they are probably really great for adults as well. I think the simpler probably the better, and I don't know. I mean, the transversal approach again. Like look online, but yes, absolutely, the good stuff will work regardless of the subject area. And if you look at the disinfo checklist that I was talking about, we're really talking about know your own mind. Let me see. I'm just going to open it again. Shall I share? No, I'm not going to share it here again, but I'm just looking at it myself. But check on the disinformation checklist includes elements such as check your emotions. Does the post make you feel angry or anxious? Are your emotions shaping your view? Be aware that what you're receiving might be manipulating your engagement. Understand the algorithms, and these are things that you can really address regardless of the subject that you're teaching or the age group that you're teaching. And then there's much more technical things such as learning how to do a reverse image search, but really knowing your mind, understanding your own prejudices that you might hold, your own confirmation bias that you might be tending towards. That's really the starting point. If we can make sure, what we're finding online often engages, the alligator brain, the dinosaur brain in the back of our skull. And what we need to do is really take time and engage the system 2, the rational thinking. If you can do that with your students, you're already winning.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And this can apply to different age category. Thank you very much. I'm checking in the chat if we have any other curiosities for and questions. I think our participants already asked all their questions. Let me just quickly check. There was a question about the role of internet, but I think you already mentioned it and talked about it quite in detail. Of course, if you want to add anything about that, about internet and the source of information from a participant, let me check.
Yes, I mean, this is it, right? We're talking about, I mean, you're right. I mean, you're pointing out the internet. It's not only the internet where this is important, of course, also, you know, regular print, you know, hard copy publications you would also want to be looking at. But yes, online, use these tools. Use these tools, slow down, breathe, ask your students questions, open the conversation, and don't try to find the answers immediately. We have to find our way there, and don't be afraid to sort of engage with opinions that you might not necessarily share. I think that's something that's almost becoming a luxury these days, where we just find our views echoed in our information world.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
and I
also
love
have
that.
a
I love the comment at the
yeah,
bottom here
exactly.
by every teacher must be a media literacy teacher in the contemporary world. Yes, because you're teaching them, you're teaching the children the basic ability to assemble a worldview. Absolutely. And in that way, to also be active democratic citizens, because if you think about the fact that democracy really relies on our ability to make informed choices, then being well informed is really a precondition for actually making democracy work.
Thank you, Julian. Okay, I think that if there are no further questions, I can see a lot of inspired comments. I hope you're seeing them too. So discussing honestly and openly with children and many other comments about the benefits of these approaches in the classroom. So I would like to thank you again, you and Ryan, very much for the great presentation of today and for providing this overview about how to teach media literacy, about how to encourage students to become active citizens, especially in the relationship with the information. It was really interesting. And I hope that the eTwinning teachers that joined us today will implement these approaches and these good practices in their projects this year. And then this was a good base to start. And if you would like to say some final words, otherwise we can wrap up earlier and
Yes, no, I think that everything's really been said, to be honest. And maybe Ryan wants to add something, but I'm just always so impressed and amazed at this wonderful eTwinning community. We've got 215 teachers on this call actively thinking about this. I think you're all doing a brilliant job dedicating your thoughts to this, and I hope that soon this is going to be part and parcel of your own curriculum, and it's going to become easier for all of you to be teaching this. I really hope so. We can see the benefits. We can see when teachers engage what a difference it makes. It's not rocket science. It just takes a little bit of dedication and courage, I think. So I wish you lots of courage and success, and I hope to hear if you do go ahead and start teaching this more. We'd love to hear from you. Ryan, maybe you would like to say something.
I think you said everything. The only thing maybe I can add is seeing all your motivated comments and all your motivated messages and saying that you are all from all around the world, even it seems. So we are really grateful to see this whole panel and this whole audience taking their hands in the mud of all this information world and being able to raise the next generation. We are grateful for that, and we see that our job means a lot, and it's thanks to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much again, Julian and Ryan. Then I wish you all a nice evening. Thank you to our attendees who have joined us today, and you will be able to see the recording and the presentation as of the next days. Bye all. Thanks
Thank
again.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.